Friedrich Koenig, German inventor of the high-speed printing press, said, "We tend to forget that happiness doesn't come as a result of getting something we don't have, but rather of recognizing and appreciating what we do have." This is the Producer's Lounge podcast. I'm your host, Richard Tucci, and on this week's episode we have producer Andy Dunn. I first met Andy several years ago at a USC film school mixer called First Team, and even though we never worked together, we stayed in touch and I became fascinated with what he did. This episode is from our Boneyard a couple of years ago when Andy was working for 1K Studios. You know all those behind-the-scenes footage pieces and interactive DVD menus that keep us entertained for hours longer than the actual movie we bought? He gets to make those. Interactive producing in digital media is a transitioning industry and forces producers to work with studios and contract vendors both in the US and overseas. They even have their own awards given out annually in Studio City. Andy is a job creator, an executive producer, a business owner. He is at the top of his game in the interactive media producing world, and I'm glad to have him on. Here now is my dinner with Andy Dunn.
So thanks for coming.
Sure, you're welcome.
So how did you're working this week, huh?
Yeah, put a little time into the office. I typically, in years past, it's sort of a working vacation. It's usually pretty quiet. So it's kind of like save my vacation time for some other time in the year, but go into the office, get paid for it, but it's a little more mellow. And this year just happened to have a few projects, so it's a little busier.
Gotcha.
So you're going for the full 2 weeks?
Week and a half.
Week and a half?
Yeah. And my sister's in Brazil, so I can crash on it fast.
Excellent. Save a few Deutschmarks.
A few Deutschmarks, a few euros.
A few euros, yeah. My wife and I are going to Switzerland and France for a week and a half this summer. It'll be my first time in Europe.
Really?
So I'm looking forward to that, yeah. I went to the Soviet Union as part of a sort of a high school group thing. So it was in '89, just before it fell, maybe about 7 months before it fell, while it still was the Soviet Union. And aside from that, I really haven't traveled outside of the U.S., just kind of Caribbean for the honeymoon, but that doesn't really count because it's just a cruise sort of thing, so don't really feel like you're exploring foreign lands.
Yeah, my dad the same way, because he never went outside the U.S. until he was about, so yeah. That's good. By the way, almost everything is good.
Yeah, all right.
What are you in the mood for?
Look at the chicken here. Looks like they've got sort of grill specials. I think we bumped into each other at Comic-Con, but I think we met at the USC. Is it not the First Look, but what was the program they were doing with the First Team? Yeah. I think that's where we first met. So yeah.
You were looking for stuff to produce at the time because you were working at. Huh? Potentially, yeah. Did anything ever come out of that?
Yeah, I don't know. I never got any follow-ups. I didn't wind up joining a team. I don't know if you did.
No, me neither. I mean, it seemed like one of those events where, you get everybody in the room, everyone's excited, they exchange cards, right, and then everyone disappears.
Right. Everyone has their own things. And yeah, I never, I don't remember ever getting any follow-up emails. There might have been an invitation to an event. I think they might have had some sort of follow-up at the end of the year to kind of wrap up who actually joined teams and what they had come up with. But if they did that, I think I missed it. So
yeah, I think I saw in like a email blast like one film actually got into production. The film, I don't know which one it was. Yeah, I don't know. And then the next year they had another one. And then all I remember from that one is people like us were banned from the second one because we went to the first.
Oh, if you had participated the first time? Yeah, that's sure. Yeah, that's fair enough. Mix it up a little bit.
That's true.
You have to kind of figure if things didn't align for you the first time around, then may not again. So a lot of the writers would probably bring the same stuff. And
that's true. And then you went to SC back in 93 and 94, right?
Graduated 94, yeah.
And you were the head of SCFX back when you were.
I was.
Where are you from originally, by the way?
Sort of all over the place. I was born in Rochester, New York, but only lived there about a year, so I don't remember any of it. My dad worked for the phone company at the time, was transferred to Tulsa, Oklahoma. So I stayed there until about 7th grade. My parents had divorced a few years before that, and my mom decided to go back to Tampa, Florida, which is where she was from. So I went to high school in Tampa, and then came out to USC.
So you kind of like a military brat.
Out the military, yeah. And my dad moved out to Northern California shortly after the divorce, so I'd spend my summers with him traveling around Northern California.
And then when you got out here and you just started doing it, did you automatically know you want to go into visual effects, or is that something your family?
No, that's something I stumbled upon. I wanted to get into films like everyone that came out, direct or produce or something cool, be the next Spielberg or George Lucas, and didn't exactly go down that path. But yeah, what happened for me was so I got into the effects while at school. Was actually more into makeup effects, foam latex and all that kind of stuff. So I would do special effects for student films. The Museum of Science and Industry that's across the Rose Garden from campus, during my senior year they were actually developing a traveling exhibit on movie special effects. So I found out about it and became an exhibit researcher. So I was working part-time through my senior year of school. But when I graduated, the exhibit still had 7 months or so to go to completion, so they made that a full-time job. And of course I kept sticking my nose in all the interactive and video exhibits being developed along with kind of all the artifacts that I was curating. So it wound up turning into a full-time job for me to oversee all their exhibit development, all their exhibit media. So I stayed there for, I think, 7 years after that. Stayed there for quite a while.
I have it written down. I did do some LinkedIn research.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. And eventually, like, this is going to be the first episode, and then eventually I'll build up to the blue cards that James Lipton has. So,
All right.
so yeah, you were there 92 to 99. And this was pre-internet.
Yeah,
So I'm kind of curious as a researcher, how did you research prior to the internet?
a lot of trips to the library. But that was an interesting time because while I was at the museum, the internet was just starting to boom. Even when I was in school, I think one of my roommates had, I've forgotten the name of it. It was before AOL.
Prodigy.
Might have been Prodigy. I think it started with a C is the one that I'm thinking of. Anyway, it doesn't. CompuServe. I was thinking Comcast isn't right, but CompuServe. Yeah. So that started to get interesting, but it wasn't until several years into the museum job that we finally got email accounts and things started to bloom that way. So I was involved in the Science Center's first website, and that was a big, exciting time for everyone there.
Gotcha.
Seems kind of cheesy now. I mean, the website was definitely cheesy, but...
Did you have a lot of flashing GIFs and sound effects?
No, we went really minimal on that, thankfully. Yeah. I, on the side, helped people with some websites. I had this one woman, complete tangent. She was kind of doing... There's almost like a Brazilian tourism site out of Las Vegas. And she had had a friend of hers, young guy, do the initial design. And she knew it didn't look right, but she didn't want to hurt his feelings. So she was asking me to help it, but I couldn't get rid of the animated mailbox gifts and things like that. And the little rainbow, like, opening and closing lines and things like that. So that was, it was a little frustrating. The early days of web with all the painful gifs. Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. So you had a full-time job and a side job?
Yeah, I would just do little gigs like that, little website things. I have some friends in Las Vegas, family friends going back to 5th grade that have a little art gallery, so I helped them set up their first website, and some friends around here wanted to make little websites for characters they created, so I'd do stuff like that. Really didn't make much money on it, but it was kind of fun.
I know a lot of friends I have in the same ways that they have their main day job, and then they've also got a side business that brings in some extra gas at the end. It's like
right.
Everyone does it.
Yeah, pretty common. Most of our designers end up moonlighting off and on for little gigs.
And then you would produce these interactive exhibits with the California Science Center. So what is producing an interactive exhibit like? Is it all computer-based stuff, all video menu integration, or is it there a lot of live components as well?
Well, there was actually a lot of variety. There were a lot of different types of exhibits. Most of them were built using Macromedia at the time Director. So we would hire outside agencies to do the programming, and we would either use internal designers, or there was usually a larger design firm doing the physical exhibition design for the different exhibits. Sometimes they would do the graphics as well. So we would, it's kind of a mix of the graphics, a little bit of video, and then the computer programming. So I would work with the curators and the designers and figure out what the functionality should be for each particular topic that they wanted to do. Maybe it was wildlife in the desert, so we came up with something that's computer-based, but it had a physical component as well, whether it be a diorama of taxidermied animals. You'd have a little digital camera to move around, digital version of the same scene, and you could land over particular animals and then get little pop-ups of info. Then we had some that were more elaborate games. There was a red blood cell battle sort of game where you actually stood on a big fiberglass red blood cell, and that worked as a joystick, so you could lean in the different directions. And then on screen there was a really, at the time, rudimentary 3D fly-through of veins and vessels, and you've got the blood cells.
What year was this?
That one was 97.
That's really
98.
That's advanced.
I mean, it kind of was. I mean, if you look at it, it's pretty simple animation, pretty low processing power. Most of the work was kind of managing outside contractors that would actually develop it, or at least program it for us.
What's your worst contractor story?
Worst contractor story? We had some there. I won't get into names, but it was one company that did most of the video pieces and some of the interactives for the Science Center. And for the most part, the day-to-day people that we worked with were fantastic. They were really talented. They did a great job, but there was a big finance dispute. We had a VP at the Science Center. When setting up contracts, she was a real stickler for liquidated damages clauses. I don't know if you're familiar with those, but
Not what are those?
so it's essentially when you're hiring someone, it's a penalty for them being late. So for each day that they're late, they were going to be deducted something like $700 from the total payment that they were supposed to get. So this was more than a year-long process. So when you go through something like that, there are lots of opportunities for delays to be caused by clients missing reviews, being a couple days late, or the vendor being a few days late with things. So we got to the point where they were getting really late to the final delivery. There were check-ins, but they were falling behind quite a bit. So we had to have a big debate involving a lot of people and document tracking to kind of pinpoint that they were at fault for more than 2 weeks of the delays. And Science Center.
This was all in-house before you actually addressed it with them.
Well, this is with them too. I mean, we did the document tracking internally, but then we had to have quite a few conversations with them and finally hash out. That one was a little interesting. At one point, I was still pretty young, new in my career, so I tried to go to the principal of this contract company and tried to kind of broker a deal. I knew roughly what the Science Center was going to be okay giving in on or accepting. So I remember trying to put together a 20,000 number for him, and he just laughed me off like, you stupid young kid, I'm not going to pay, I'm not going to take that penalty. When it was all said and done, I think it was like 55K. So he he missed out on 35K of savings he could have had. So since then, I'm kind of surprised in my career I've never run into liquidated damages clauses. But most of the stuff I do right now is such a quick churn that, and it's pretty well defined and achievable scope. It's not as much of a concern. I haven't tried to push that into any of the contractors that I work with.
Which is really interesting because from then you went to Vivendi Games, and then from Vivendi Games you went to One Face Studios. And you're handling a lot of big clients. You're handling, Spielberg movies. You're handling True Blood. You're handling some of my favorite shows.
Yeah. For the last several years, I was kind of the exec producer over all the menus and interactive features that we would do for them. We kind of rearranged things a little bit to where I'm focusing mostly on the interactive. I work on the menus a little bit, like Tintin, some of the bigger ones that come along. But now I branched out and I'm doing some things with Warner Brothers. My company's done a lot with Warner Brothers over the last 10 years before I got there, but personally I'm starting to work with them a little bit more.
Gotcha.
And a little bit of Disney off and on throughout the years. And we do sort of our one major client that's a little bit different is Apple. So we have worked with them. We don't get to publicize it too much. We talk about it on the website a little bit. But we've helped them do themes for some of their software, like the ones that are natural tie-ins, iMovie, iDVD. So the home software that are letting users kind of make their own movies and DVDs. So when you get those, they have already canned themed packages that you can use, like a travel theme with backgrounds. And so we actually developed all of those with and for Apple.
Now, do you do those for just iMovie and iDVD, or do you do the whole iLife package?
We worked on Keynote a little bit, so we've kind of worked on the whole iLife. We've even done work on some of the pro apps. So Motion, when they were developing that, we would help. So that's a little different. You aren't doing kind of just the cookie cutter themed packages. You're really just getting into the elements that are available for artists to use. So different types of transitions and effects, particle effects, and things like that. So we would come up with those basic toolkit elements for them. And kind of bringing it back into the home entertainment realm, they launched something within iTunes. They have two versions. They have one called Extras and one called LPs. So the Extras are focused on movies, TV shows that you buy. Actually, I think it's just movies for now. The LPs are focused on albums. So they wanted to sort of plus up the basic a la carte purchasing of songs and movies. So it's essentially a DVD type of package where you're getting linear special feature content all wrapped up with a nice interface that's themed to the movie. So it becomes kind of like a DVD.
Okay.
So
is this like the special production booklet that I get with like my Lady Gaga DVD, or more advanced stuff?
Well, it's sort of like that, but it's all digital. So it's from Apple through iTunes. You can purchase a regular album or just the songs individually, or you can purchase the LP for it. So you get this little container that takes over the screen, and but yeah, basically it's a digital version of the booklet where you get the lyrics and liner notes and things like that.
Now, how are artists being used and utilizing this process to take advantage of these technologies, or is it purely a marketing thing and marketing is pushing bonus features?
It's a little bit of both. And to be honest, the whole platform is kind of, I think it plateaued and is chilled out a little bit right now. Consumers didn't seem to pick it up too much. It had a little bit of popularity, and it's still hanging around. The one thing that's the biggest knock on it is that when they came out, they had the first generation of their Apple TV. So it worked on the Apple TV, and then it worked on your laptop. It doesn't work on iOS platforms, so it doesn't work on your iPhone or your iPad, and especially not working on the iPad is really just kind of a killer for it. So at some point, hopefully Apple will get iPad support, and then it'll probably take off a little bit more.
Is it a Flash-based thing, or does it have to be HTML5? Is that the problem?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of their own brew of HTML5 with some JavaScript functionality. It's a little bit limited. It's not a full HTML5.
Now, if, let's say, an independent filmmaker wanted to take advantage of this technology, what would they use it for, and then how could they get access to it?
Well, it's basically just a way to enhance the presentation of your content. So yeah, quite a few independents have done it. Some of them have hired us, and other companies have gotten into the mix. But yeah, it really does end up becoming sort of like a DVD. So you've got a nice main menu, and you can select either to watch whatever the feature is, the movie, or go watch some of the making of featurettes, things like that, branch off of it. We've done some games for a few of them. There was a Gorillaz LP, so that had some little. It was kind of a cartoon-based environment that we created, riffing off of their album art, and there was a fish tank in it, so it was a little fish tank game. So, yeah, there've been some kind of interesting things, but until they get it on iPad, I don't think it's really going to take off. But it was a fun year-long project where Apple came to us because of our relationship, and we created the first 75 or so of these things for movies and music. So it's kind of a cool relationship. They come to us every so often to help work out some cool new things.
I gotta ask, because I'm real curious, is 1K an all in-house studio, or do you do like deals with outside vendors as well, similar to what you did with the Science Center?
For the most part, it's all in-house. We have a creative director, we have 3 art directors, I think we have 4 designers, a little junior to the art directors. We have about 5 production artists. We don't have a full-time editor in-house right now. We have 3 regulars that they're sort of permalancers. They come in pretty much every day anyway.
Gotcha.
A few days off here and there. We have probably 7 or 8 producers, different levels. There's a little bit of a hierarchy. We have a couple of programmers, so we do some programming, both for DVD and for apps. We're getting into that a little bit more now. So we have one 3D guy, but when he gets booked up, there are other 3D guys that we'll use. For Tintin, we wound up trying a firm that we hadn't used before, and that turned out to be a little bit unpleasant.
Wait, I'm sorry, you hadn't used before?
We hadn't used them before, so it was new. Basically, all the guys that we usually use were booked up, so we had to branch out and got a recommendation from someone. It turned out they just weren't that great, or they were all booked up and they had their interns doing the work for us, and they were really slow, and what they delivered was not very good, so we had to keep pushing them and going back and forth. And what was supposed to be a week of work turned into 3 for our part, maybe a month or 2 ahead of theatrical release. We'll start to get to see rough versions, especially if we're going to do some special content for it. Our linear producers, often they'll get in on the actual production of a feature, so they'll be on set and working with things like that. But for my side of things...
When you say linear producers, you mean like a publicist producer, or...?
No, just video special features. So if we're doing the making of featurettes in-house, it's not something that 1K has always had, but a couple of years ago we brought in a couple of people from the Cannery and Trailer Park and some other places. So we have a little group that does some of that. Whereas I focus more on the menus and the interactive special features. I found a couple of our editors are some of the chattiest guys. So if I have a really busy day, I have to try not to go into editorial, because I'll end up spending an extra half hour just chatting with the guys, which is fun to do. But yeah, it's hard to like pop in. Hey, can you just do try and get out? Never seems to work. It's like they're in their cave all day long, so as soon as there's human contact, they they need to chat for a while. Yeah, it's obviously project-based, so we're usually a 10 to 7 shop, and for the last month or so, it had been pretty regular, normal days, but just over the last couple of weeks, it heated up again. Got a few projects all overlapping, so had some 9 and 10 o'clock nights, and there was a period where we were cranking out those menus that I didn't leave the office for 3 days. I spent 2 nights in the office, sleeping on one of the edit bay sofas, little cat naps here and there. That was pretty miserable. Just as we get down to the last crunch of it all coming together and trying to deliver.
Now, is it just because they're high profile, or were there artist entanglements?
No, the talent approvals on those were pretty smooth. We started that one probably 6 or 7 months ahead of delivery, just coming up with concepts and looks. So there was a lot of time spent, having ideas shot down and coming up with new ones, and finally getting to one that he liked and animating it, bringing it to life, doing some revisions to that. But the main thing was just that in addition to really elaborate menus with a lot of motion elements, sort of a main menu, lead and loop, and video transitions to submenus and motion on those submenus, we also had quite a few interactives. For the time when the first one came out, it was HD. So we had some HD interactive games. I think that had one really elaborate one in terms of content that played over the movie, and a couple of standalone interactive features. So there was just a lot that we were producing and having it all come together at the end.
Because you're talking about a big 7-month-long process, managing a lot of people. Because you just outlined a huge team,
Right.
so how did you manage to keep all those ducks in a row?
Just a lot of Excel files.
A lot of Excel fun.
Yeah, and a lot of patience. The fun part of my role, but the challenging part, is that for the interactives, I'm also sort of the functionality designer, the game designer. So for something that's just a menu project, I can kind of step back and just keep all the pieces moving. Make sure that the designers get the assets they need and they get that passed off to the editors. They go back and forth. I'm just kind of watching all the things. But when we do a game, I'm really actively involved in designing it, doing all the wireframes, the paperwork, the documentation to explain what it should be, working with the programmers, working closely with the designers, seeing what comes back, being iterative and trying to change it. So that gets really involved. That sucks a tremendous amount of time.
Gotcha.
But it's fun time for me. It's the stuff that I like doing. It's where I get to be creative. I mean, again, I kind of was a little more interested in the creative side and directing and things like that, and I just kind of fell into being a producer. So when I was at school, I wasn't really thinking of being a film producer, so I didn't think of it in those terms. But I found that interactive and game producers are a little different from the traditional movie producer. And of course, even within film, there are the different roles, from an executive who could be creative or could just be lending some money or their name or something like that, down to the line producers. So yeah, I mean, sometimes some are just money men, but I think there are quite a few that you can tell are putting their creative stamp on projects. Bruckheimer, love or hate his movies, there's definitely an influence that he has when he puts those together. It's not just piecing together the team, but you can tell there's a little bit of an influence in the product that comes out.
I think also it's a question of choosing the right players who have the right styles, because some people, despite the fact that they brag, I'm an artist, I can do anything, they're really strong in one area over another.
Sure.
Especially when talking about graphic design, where
Right.
some people lean towards certain styles.
Yeah.
And as a producer, you got to figure out, okay, how can I not only get these two styles to work, but get personalities that will work together as well?
We definitely do some of that. We have, of our 3 art directors, we have a sense of which ones are best for certain projects. There's one that's sort of a minimalist, purist, likes to really refine fonts and layout and spacing and subtle textures. So we end up using him for a lot of the Apple projects. That's just, perfect. Apple's all about high-end design, and this is how that one art director approaches things. We have a couple of others that are pretty diverse, maybe lean a little bit more sci-fi, fantasy and things like that. And we actually don't have a female art director at the moment. We had one that moved on, so I personally sort of miss, her take on things. She did really amazing textured, layered motion effects, just really complex and rich environments that she would create for things. So in some ways we're missing that a little bit. But yeah, there's definitely figuring out who you think would be best for a project. But then there's also the challenge of, well, guy X is perfect for it, but he's booked for a month already for something else. So have to have one of the other people step up.
How many sheeple? are in your address book and phone lists and all that?
It's got to be hundreds. Yeah, I don't know.
So I used to have a big Excel file with notes, but it became too unruly. So I just put it all into Mac address book. I discovered I have 1,700 contacts.
That's pretty scary. I don't think I want to tabulate.
Then what?
I don't want to add them up. Doesn't seem like it should be that many, but man, who knows?
Yeah.
You seem pretty good at networking, though. So I could believe that you've got a pretty broad database of people.
It's interesting because there's good at networking, and then there's like good at networking with the right people. You know, like when you made the jump to from the Science Center to Vendy Games, was that through networking or was that just through a job like that?
There's actually an interim step in between. I spent about 9 months with the Starbright Foundation, which was a charitable organization that Steven Spielberg had lent his name to, but what they were trying to do was use technology, essentially creating a closed-off, private, online chat environment for children in hospitals across the U.S. that were dealing with terminal or pretty serious illnesses. So it was a sort of a moderated social community for them to connect and get support. And we had a lot of interactive games in there about specific conditions and procedures they might be facing and things like that.
Gotcha.
So I spent about 9 months there, helped them. They worked out a partnership with AOL at the time. So AOL helped us expand this closed-off network into a still private network, but one that could be accessed from home. So when the kids were fortunate enough to leave the hospital and go home, but still had that sort of social peer group that they wanted to connect with, then they could do it. So I helped get that off the ground. And then I went to Vivendi. But to answer your question, both of them, I think, were just using monster.com or searches for jobs.
Wow.
Yeah. Either one of them were sort of a person that I met.
One of the reasons I developed a lot of skills in networking or talking with people, because I'm actually not a NASA lecturer. I like kind of being the center of a show, because I wanted to be an actor before I got into film school, but really I developed these skills because I was fed the whole line in film school that you talk to people and networking lasts. Eventually, that will help you get a job. Why don't you? So the truth is, you're talking to people at events that are at your level. It's just random luck.
Right. Someone gets a promotion, needs someone to fill their spot or something like that.
Exactly.
It definitely happens, but yeah. It's much better to get to work with people.
I agree.
So the more outside people you can actually work on projects with and get to know them intimately in that working relationship. There are people that we've brought in, tried them out for a contract role, and they do exceptionally well, so we end up offering them full-time gigs. So that kind of thing, I think, is a lot more common than just bumping into someone at a conference or something and somehow turning that into a job.
It's the myth that's proliferated from like the Studio 54 days. Right here, I make you. The other great myth of producing is that you can finance your independent film on your credit cards, and then you'll make all the money back when you sell it.
Not even close. Yeah. Too many people that have saved up, what seems like a huge amount, 100,000 or something like that. And that's still only enough to make a shitty movie. So then nothing really happens from it.
Yeah.
There are the rare times where you can have that creative spark and everything just aligns and you can do something that's not very expensive, but so many people are trying to create something at, feature level, wide release quality with their 100,000, and it just falls way short, and it's kind of a travesty.
Out of curiosity, that first team event, you said you were looking for stuff to potentially produce. What were you think you were looking for out of that? What would have been some ideal components to a Tragedy Bowl project?
Honestly, I don't know. I was more curious about the whole thing than anything. I was surprised they picked me because I haven't done any film financing or anything like that. So I met some cool people, but I tried, met up with a few of the writers. I had a real loose idea for something that I kind of wanted to get written, which maybe I'll try and write myself one day. And most of the writers there already had a couple of scripts that they'd written, so they were really trying to get that made somehow. So,
Do you regret anything?
not the projects, and some of them are completely horrible. Like, no one gets to see them, but it was fun making them. It was fun learning along the way. And I guess mine is more afterwards. Like I said, I started working at the museum during my senior year. So I look back sometimes and wonder if I hadn't done that, if I might have picked up an internship with a feature producer or something like that, and set myself up to be on that side of the business rather than the home entertainment side. But in the end, I'm pretty happy with my career right now, so I can't complain too much. But there's always that what if.
Your internship is a tricky thing because I did 3 internships over college. First one was Urban Entertainment, which they had done Undercover Brothers 2 years prior, and then I came in, and they started going under at that point. So it was 7 black guys and me, and they were all really angry all the time, and I didn't know why. So, and then the following summer I did an internship for Roger Park, which
That would have had to have been fun, right? No? I mean,
well, that's the thing, like,
it's going to be on the cheap, but still.
yeah, but I mean, I got to do like Walla lines for his Fast and the Furious ripoff, but and then the third internship I did was with Arnold Copenstein. So he hasn't produced a movie since 2002, so see where that went.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of a shame. When I was in school, he actually came and talked to us when The Fugitive came out, and he was talking about that one. And he was a character. I mean, he was like the stereotype of what I don't know if he was putting on a little bit of a show for us, in the lecture hall. But yeah, I remember some of his lines, like, producing is all about the deal, and no one's ever screwed me over on a deal in this business. There's definitely some ego there, but he was an entertaining guy. He just seemed like one of those larger-than-life producer types, so you fit the bill, yeah. So did you have much interaction with him?
Very little, but he was nice in that he made sure that every semester, all the interns would get to sit down with the head of development, and they get to sit down with Ken and ask me. And
that's pretty valuable. I mean, that's cool.
So that was worthwhile.
Yeah.
One of the things he recommended was something practical, as far as don't be afraid to get screwed over. Eventually, you're going to have to find someone you trust and work with them. And that means finding a mid-range script, partnering with a senior producer. So.
Yeah, a ton of scripts in the town, so it's always hard to not just have the right one, but have the right one at the right time with what someone wants to make.
Did you ever take a stab at optioning something and pitching around town?
No. That was that's kind of the thing with my path, is I felt like I never had the right contacts to even attempt that. Again, all of my network is all on the home entertainment side. It's all at the studios. It's all separate from the theatrical marketing and development. And I think what I'm more interested in these days is not even, trying to make the big picture out of it, but just come up with some little short film, little animated something or something cool that I can work on the side with some of my friends, some of the designers that I work with that are really talented, and just do it for ourselves. And if something ever comes of it, then great, but probably not. So as long as we're happy with it, then
Gotcha. And do the festival circuit and
maybe if we're happy enough with it. But if not, then it's kind of like going back to film school. Just make it to make it.
So what's next for you in 1K, you think?
It's a time of transition for us. So, it has been for the last couple of years. DVD, Blu-ray sales are dwindling. Excuse me, I'm gonna get some nice intestinal sound effects here on your recording. Blu-rays never picked up to be what DVD was in the heyday 4 or 5 years ago. So our company saw a huge boom in the DVD days, and then Blu-ray came along, and maybe a little too soon, like people just weren't in that much of a hurry to go own, catalog movies that they have on DVD again on Blu-ray.
Yeah.
That's kind of the fun movies like Footloose and things like that are, great to have, but for the most part, you're cool with them just on DVD. You don't need to have it on Blu-ray as well. So there's fighting with that.
And I've heard black and white does terrible on Blu-ray as well.
Yeah. But anyway, the other competing factor for home entertainment is everything digital. So even though those iTunes extras aren't taking off, just buying or renting movies by themselves through iTunes or video on demand or Netflix or the subscription services, all of that's picking up. So fewer people are buying packaged, fewer people want to own, a movie, a physical copy of it. So yeah, the budgets are shrinking, the windows are tightening. It used to be that you'd have a theatrical release and 6 months to a year later you'd have the DVD release and there would be a whole new marketing campaign. Well, the studios decided that they wanted to collapse that window and try and, as much as possible, just do one marketing push, maybe extend it a little bit longer, but then try and get that DVD out pretty soon, 90 days or so after the theatrical release. So that has its own separate challenges for us, where we have to do everything a little bit before it comes out in the theaters, and about the time it comes out in theaters we have to deliver. Well, that, just because there's less time, means that we've had to simplify the scope of some of the things that we do, which also ties in with the studios not wanting to spend as much, so our budgets are smaller. So we're trying to figure out what our role is going to be when there are no more Blu-rays or DVDs in 3 or 4 years or so. And so the iTunes extras and things along those lines, trying to come up with clever ways to menu and create interactive special features for the digital version of movies is what we're focusing on. So we're doing a lot with apps. The buzz thing right now is second screen apps. So Disney has probably done the most notable of these, where for Bambi you get an app and you queue up the movie on your Blu-ray, so it's designed specifically to tie with the Blu-ray version. And as the movie plays along, content appears on your app that ties into it. So you've got the opening of the movie, you've got a little intro on your app talking about some of how the movie was made. The first scene comes up with Bambi walking in, and then there's a little digital flip book of the line drawings, the actual animation not colored in of some of the same scenes, so you can interact with that. Or trivia will pop up along the way, or little tidbits about the filmmakers, but it's all kind of customized to sync with what's going on in the movie.
And will there be like a remote signal that connects the two so you can stop it on the app?
There are some ways to do that. The Disney one, for the most part, doesn't do that. They actually use an audio sync, so the app is just listening for the movie and it will sync up, so it doesn't talk back and forth. So there's no way to pause the movie using the app. But there are also network connected versions through the Wi-Fi in your Blu-ray player and the tablet, where you can then control the movie. So we're working on some of those. But it's cool. But after the first 5 minutes, like you kind of want to be in one space or the other. You want to be just watching the movie, or you want to ignore the movie and like let's just check out of this cool content. So we're trying to figure out ways that flip that around or do other things, or other ways to just be companions to a movie that don't require you to be doing the head bob up and down to look at it.
I hate to say it, but as you were describing it, I was thinking to myself, my God, that's ADD.
Right.
That works great for kids, but then you hear about people like us. How does a filmmaker find a way to actually make that useful in the storytelling task?
Right. And it's a little different in it. That's the filmmakers usually aren't involved in those. It's the marketing department. So they just want something that they can put out there and get some buzz with. So we, every new project is, well, we've got to do something cooler than the last one. So what can we add to it? What can we do to make this the new fun thing?
I feel the check. That's sorry. I got the worst time.
That's all right.
But wait, 6:30.
Okay. But okay, let me pose a hypothetical for you. Let's say I've got a friend named John Elfers, and he just did an independent horror movie, and now he's about to do an independent thriller movie, both very dark in tone, etc. Let's say he wanted to find something to find like an interactive way to extend the movie viewing experience for his film. And I bring up these because I know a lot of independent filmmakers now are also doing indie horror and indie thriller. What would you recommend to people like that to, as far as interactive or menus or what have you?
Yeah, I don't know if there's one blanket way. I usually prefer to tap into the content and extend the fiction that's created for a particular property. That's where I usually start with the studios, and sometimes they'll go for it. But again, on the home entertainment end of things, there's usually not as much interaction with the filmmakers. The studios are wanting to minimize it as much as they can. They just don't want to have to deal with approval cycles and things like that. So they end up steering clear of that, and it's almost always becomes just the making of kind of stuff that we end up creating. And we could do interactive things around that, but as a movie fan, I'm always more interested in extend this universe. Let me, don't talk to me about the actors and how they portrayed the characters. Keep them in character and give me something that I can interact with that just extends that. So, and I would think that, for a director or someone that's creating their own independent product, that would appeal to them. So then there are all sorts of games. They do a lot more of that for the theatrical websites. They usually tend to stay a little bit more in the fiction, and they're kind of introducing you to the fiction of that property.
Is it just because the websites are cheaper and easier to change rather than the DVDs and Blu-rays?
Well, no, it's I think it's just because of where it is in the product cycle. Again, they're wanting to introduce you to this fiction and get you interested in wanting to go see the movie. They're trying to put your butt in a theater seat. And on the flip side, for home entertainment, that's when filmmakers do get involved. They usually kind of want to talk about their process, and maybe it's just that they feel spent on having created the fictional whatever it is, and having to do more of that seems like a lot more work than just talking about how they did it the first time around. But yeah,
That makes sense.
and the website ones usually aren't that elaborate. And I guess there's still a mix of, like, the simplest ones are still just wallpapers and stuff like that, but it seems to have a little bit more of a lean towards staying within the fiction. But yeah, I mean, on DVD and Blu-ray, anything that's sort of a custom type of game gets a lot more expensive. You've got to have people program it, so on the authoring side, that it's probably a little prohibitive on an independent budget kind of thing. Like, I would imagine they'd probably want to focus on just making the best possible movie itself that they could. Worry about that stuff a little later.
Well, you'd be surprised.
But yeah,
Thanks for knowing me, man.
of course, yeah, it's been fun.
That's all, folks. Many thanks to my guest Andy Dunn for a terrific dinner. You can also find out more about what we talked about by visiting the links for this episode on our website. Our banner image this week was taken by myself. Our music this week is Shalom and Salam by Producers Lounge fan Saltman Knowles. Please check out his website at www.saltmanknowles.com. We're starting to grow our Producers Lounge community, so if you'd like to submit either jazz music or banner photos for an episode, post a link to our Facebook page. You can like us on Facebook at facebook.com/theproducerslounge. Remember, you show your support for films by not downloading them, you show your support on Hulu by clicking on the commercials, and you show your support for podcasts by liking and commenting. And you can always check out our website, www.theproducersloungepodcast.com. Thank you again. I'm your host, Richard Tucci. Join us next week for more cocktails and questions, and until then, keep producing dreams.